Imagine two photographers standing in the same place, looking at the same person. They use the same camera, the same lens, and the same light. One kneels down. The other climbs 3 steps. They press the shutter at almost the same moment. The photographs are completely different. Nothing in the world changed. Only the photographer did. That sounds obvious, but it reveals one of the most important truths in photography. The camera does not simply record what is in front of it. It records what the world looks like from one very specific point in space. Move that point even slightly, and relationships begin to change. A face becomes dominant. A building begins leaning. A person appears powerful, vulnerable, isolated, or connected. Background objects move closer together or further apart. Lines converge differently. The story changes before a single camera setting has been touched. Painters understood this problem long before photography existed. For centuries, artists struggled with a simple question. How do you make a flat surface feel like a 3-dimensional world? The breakthrough came when Renaissance artists began developing linear perspective. Parallel lines appeared to converge toward a vanishing point. Distant objects became smaller, and suddenly a flat wall could seem to open into streets, churches, and enormous rooms. It changed painting because it changed where the viewer stood. The picture was no longer simply a collection of objects. It became a world organized around one observer. Photography inherited the same idea automatically. Every time you lift a camera, you establish a viewpoint. You are deciding where the viewer will stand when they eventually see the image. And that decision carries meaning. Photograph a person from slightly below eye level and something subtle happens. The viewer begins looking upward. The subject may feel larger, stronger, or more important. Move above them and the opposite can happen. Their body becomes smaller within the environment. The frame may feel more observational, vulnerable, or distant. The lens did not create that psychology. Your position did. This is why great photographers rarely stand still for long. They move before they zoom. They step left. They crouch. They walk behind the subject. They look through doorways, between objects, and around corners. They are not searching for a better camera setting. They are searching for the point where the relationships inside the frame become meaningful. Henri Cartier-Bresson understood this instinctively. His photographs often appear effortless, as though the world simply arranged itself perfectly in front of him. But look more carefully and you begin noticing how dependent those photographs are on position. Staircases cut through frames at precise angles. People appear between geometric shapes. Shadows intersect with bodies. Move the camera a meter to either side and the entire structure collapses. The moment mattered, but so did where he was standing when it happened. Perspective also determines how objects relate to one another. Imagine photographing someone with a lamp directly behind their head. Move half a step to the side, and suddenly the lamp separates from the person. Walk closer, and the face becomes more dominant while the background seems to move away. Step back and use a longer lens, and those distances appear compressed. Again, the scene has not changed. The relationships have. This is where photographers begin confusing perspective with focal length. Wide lenses are often said to distort faces while long lenses flatten them. But the deeper truth is that perspective is primarily created by camera position. A wide lens encourages you to move closer. A longer lens encourages you to stand further away. It is that change in distance that changes the relative size of the nose, ears, background, and foreground. Move close enough to a face and the nearest features become exaggerated because they are proportionally much closer to the camera than the features further away. Step back and those differences become smaller. The portrait begins to feel flatter and calmer. The lens determines how much of that view you include. Your position determines how the world is arranged inside it. This becomes even more obvious in street photography. A normal pavement may seem completely ordinary from standing height. Kneel near the ground and suddenly shoes become foreground shapes. Buildings stretch upward and reflections dominate the scene. Climb onto a balcony and people become patterns moving through geometry. Look through a window and the frame itself becomes part of the photograph. The world offers countless photographs from every location. Most people only see the one available from eye level. That is because eye level is comfortable. It is how we experience most of our lives. We walk into a room standing upright, so we photograph it standing upright. We speak to someone face to face, so we photograph them face to face. The result may be accurate, but accuracy is not always interesting. Sometimes the photograph only appears after the photographer becomes uncomfortable. Lie on the ground, move against the wall, step behind the curtain, walk closer than feels natural. Move further away than you think you should. The goal is not to make every photograph strange. The goal is to stop accepting the first viewpoint simply because it was where you happened to be standing. There is another reason perspective matters. It changes what the viewer knows. Imagine photographing a protest from inside the crowd. Bodies surround the camera. Faces are close. Signs disappear beyond the edges of the frame. The viewer experiences confusion and pressure because the camera feels trapped inside the event. Now photograph the same protest from the roof of a building. Suddenly, individual faces become less important. The crowd becomes a pattern. The viewer understands scale instead of intimacy. Neither photograph is necessarily more truthful, but they tell different truths. That is the responsibility hidden inside perspective. Where you stand determines what the audience experiences. A photographer can make a crowd appear enormous by getting low and filling the frame, or small by moving high and revealing empty space around it. A room can feel cramped from one corner and spacious from another. Every viewpoint is a decision, and every decision influences meaning. The next time you find something worth photographing, try delaying the shutter. Before you change aperture, shutter speed, or ISO, move. Take one step left, then another. Get lower, get higher. Move closer until the background disappears. Move back until the environment becomes part of the story. Watch how objects separate and overlap. Watch how lines change direction. Watch what happens to the subject when the camera becomes smaller, taller, closer, or more distant. Eventually, one position will feel different. Not because the world suddenly became more beautiful, because the relationships inside the frame finally began saying something. Return to those two photographers standing in front of the same person. Same subject, same light, same camera, same moment. Yet one photograph feels powerful while the other feels ordinary. The difference may have been nothing more than 3 steps. Photography teaches us to look at the world. Perspective teaches us something more important. Sometimes, if the photograph isn't working, the world doesn't need to change. You do.